In the name of God, holy and undivided Trinity. Amen. Well, deep breathing. We have done some deep breathing before the service started. Do any of you know why? I do. It was not a health check, although, thank you, Mark. But it was really just sort of a reminder about how we need to just sort of land. And what I was sensing as we were gathering here is that all of us had come with all sorts of things on our minds as we walk into this space. Some of them have to do with the space itself, because we're building up for the craft fair. And Andy King is here, and he's new to the keyboard, and the choir was all gathering around him. And what other agendas are there? I mean, some of, right? Are there, I mean, you want to shout them out? What agendas do you have on your mind? Because they're all
baby
huge,
shower.
right? Baby shower. Yeah, baby shower coming. What? Christmas, exactly. Wind down from Thanksgiving. What? Basketball. The Patriots. The Patriots is a big deal at 8 o'clock. There's a lot of nervousness about the Patriots at 8. So what other things? I mean, there's a lot going on. And if you think about the world stage, right? This gospel is so fitting in terms of what's happening. You hear the seas, you know, sort of symbolically what's happening in our environment in terms of all the turmoil of the water itself as global warming or climate change occurs. And then what's happening in terms of rolling across Europe in particular, but around the world, all of the distress and the need for reconciliation worldwide. So there's so many things that can be capturing our hearts and our attention. And Jesus sort of plays them all out in the gospel that we heard today. He calls them all to say, okay, when you hear all of this that's going on, you see all of this happening in the world, and you realize that all that's going on, he said, it's like a tree that's about to come into leaf. I go, what? I don't know about you, but that's not like a tree about to come into leaf. You know, but he says it is. In another place, he talks about it in terms of birth pangs. It's like it's the beginning of the revelation of the kingdom of God. It is integral to God's kingdom coming to earth. And then he tells his followers, but don't be lost in those circumstances. Find your way to be in the world, but not of it. To be absolutely present to exactly what's going on. But to find the grace, the faith, to land in it with a sense of God's goodness and love. To know yourselves to be lights in the world for this generation. To be people who have a cause for peace and hope that doesn't come from turning your back on the world or turning away from all that's going on, but finding a way in the midst of it to know the reconciliation that Jesus came to earth to bring. The incarnation speaks of heaven to earth come down and catching all things up in himself. And that's our inheritance from him. The hope that in spite of what's going on in the world, in spite of all that could be distracting us, and I would add to what you listed, not Good Friday, Black Friday, and Cyber Monday, you know, and all that's going on commercially in the world right now. When I took my Sunday paper in this morning, the bulk of it were advertisements. It's enormous what's going on in the world. And for all of us, there's the chance to be caught up in it. And Jesus speaks about that. And the possibility in doing that we resort to dissipation of ourselves, drugs and alcohol, to sort of get away from the impact of all that. But he calls himself another way. That Jesus goes ahead of each and every one of us into this world as it really is, and he speaks peace to you and to me. And so, that, as a prelude, I'm offering each of you a little book and use it as a talisman, as a touchstone for this season, because it's titled Joy of Heaven to Earth Come Down. And it's a daily reading for each of the days of Advent. And it offers the opportunity just to reflect in the world as it really is, to be in the world and aware of the love of God in your heart growing through this Advent season. No matter what the circumstances of your life and the world, Jesus is here and loving you. Jesus is here and loving all of us. And Jesus is here meaning for us to be reaching out in love to the world, not being caught up in it and lost, but in the world and found, being people who know the love of God and can carry it with stillness and tranquility in the midst of circumstances that we truly see and understand, that we don't turn our back on and pretend it's not happening, but we find a way of living in it and with it that is amazingly, miraculously peaceful. That's the hope of Jesus coming into the world, is that you and I could be symbols of light in this generation. So you may have guessed, or maybe not, that the title of the book comes from a hymn that was written by Charles Wesley. And so let me offer you the context of the title. Love divine, all loves excelling, joy of heaven to earth come down. Fix in us thy humble dwelling, all thy faithful mercies crown. Jesus, thou art all compassion, pure unbounded love thou art. Visit us with thy salvation, enter every trembling heart. You know, it's real, what's happening in the world and how it impacts us. That's a real thing, how that impacts your body, how it impacts your awareness, what it does to your life. It's distracting and tiring. It can be that you have a trembling heart. But that doesn't have to change for you to go to Jesus. That doesn't have to change for him to come and be in your trembling heart. He can visit you and me in the midst of these circumstances, because that's what he always does. And that's why he says, you may see all the turmoil of the world, but that's like the prelude to the dawn. That's the prelude to the birth. That's the prelude to the new leaf. So watch for it. Be alert to Jesus doing something miraculous in your heart this Advent season, in spite of all that's going on and all that will go on and how it can all start swirling around us. Jesus can come and be born there, and means to be. It's the prelude to his birth. It doesn't have to change for his birth to come. So I hope that this little book of meditations will be a companion for you in that journey, and that you can find through this Advent season, that we'll all find through this Advent season, Jesus born anew in our heart and in our lives. Amen.